Sets of numbers. Here, when we talk about sets of numbers, we're talking about the real number system. Most of the time in mathematics, you deal with the real number systems. There are times when you actually get into a set of numbers that are called imaginary numbers. But for now, we're concentrating on real numbers. The real numbers are made up of lots of smaller sets of numbers. Starting with what you first learn when you start to count, we learn about the natural numbers. The natural numbers are considered your counting numbers, starting with 1. When you count, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those make up the set of natural numbers. The integers include the natural numbers, but they also include the opposite of the natural numbers, so all the negative whole numbers and the number 0. Rational numbers are what you get when you take the ratio of 2 integers. Now when we talk about ratio, we're really talking about making it a fraction. So anytime you can turn a number into a fraction form that is just whole integer values on top and bottom, we can call that a rational number. Every integer is a rational number because you can always put a 1 under a whole number. Rational numbers could also be written as a decimal, provided it's a decimal that either terminates or repeats. Now, numbers that would not be considered rational numbers are irrational numbers. Irrational numbers would be numbers that you may have seen before, like the number pi. The number pi is a decimal that never repeats and it never ends. The square root of 24 is an irrational number because it's a square root of a number that is not a perfect square. These are the kinds of numbers that we cannot write as a fraction. So we call those irrational numbers. So all in all, we have the natural numbers that you count with. We include the integers, and the integers include the negative numbers and 0. Rational numbers basically include all the fractions. And then when we add to that all the numbers we can't get as fractions, we get the entire set of real numbers. So let's look at some numbers and see which sets these numbers could belong to. The square root of 100. The square root of 100 is a rational number because 100 is a perfect square. So I can write the square root of 100 as 10. It's an integer because 10 is a positive integer, and it's a natural number because 10 is one of our counting numbers. Now -6 is a rational number because I can write it as -6/1. And it is also an integer because it has the negative in front of it. The square root of 50 is an irrational number. It's irrational because 50 is not a perfect square. A -7.4 is a rational number. It is rational because it's a decimal that ends, but it is not an integer because it has the decimal value in it. Integers can only be whole numbers. They can be positive or negative, but they have to be wholes. And then finally, 67/48. This is a rational number. I've got it written in its fraction form, but I can't simplify it to a whole number. So that's how you classify these numbers.